Joining me in the Sydney studio is James Mawhinney from Mayfair 101, who is a foundational investor in Mynt, represented today by Gary Davis. Thank you both for joining me.
Thanks, Danielle.
So first off, well, we'll say Mynt is involved in digital currency. You're pegged to a major data asset. James, you're very good at finding companies to invest in. Tell me how you found Mynt and why you became involved.
Sure. So I met Gary several years ago now, and in that period of time, Gary made me aware of a major data asset that he'd managed to secure in the United States, which I'm sure he'll elaborate a bit more on. We had a discussion late last year, given that the blockchain space had really started to take off. And we really had a very interesting discussion around what we could potentially do to leverage that data asset, given that the blockchain space had taken off, so that we could procure a currency that has the backing of a major asset, that being data.
So please tell us more about this currency, about this data asset, Gary, and how you found working with James in Mayfair 101.
Wonderful. Well, we were very interested to look at the opportunities that might grow out of large aggregated data pools. And in the United States, there'd been data collected over many years for the presidential campaigns, so that particularly President Obama could generate micro contributions to his election campaigns. And over about 12 to 15 years, a very large number of Americans were aggregated together into an opt-in database of 115 million Americans. And because of the quality of that data being related to policy trialling and voter satisfaction, it was quite attitudinal and behavioural, quite an interesting mix of information. And so the opportunity to create interpretations and make plans, proper allocation of financial resources, calculate actuarial risk in insurance environments, all sorts of things, were all there within that data pool. So it occurred to me that as an asset class, data was really underutilised. If we think about things like film library, where a film gets made once and then it's shown in TV and in cinema and OTT and cable television, etc., multiple applications, data is a very similar thing. So when we create this huge pool of data, we create an asset that has multiple uses, that goes on for a very long time, and the more of it you put together, the more touch points there are within the data, so the more value it has. So it occurred to me that with currency, there'd been a long-term problem with underpinning values to currency. And traditionally we'd seen currency backed by gold bullion, and when there wasn't enough bullion to support more and more currency being produced, President Nixon at the time decided to separate the two and allow currency to be based on different factors. And those factors are sometimes really difficult to identify. So what we felt was that if we could create a currency that was backed by an asset that was growing, had growing value, was consistently generating more and more data, then the currency would be stabilised and securitized in a way that there is no other monetary system currently available that can do that.
It's very interesting stuff. James, can you tell me what you think the implications will be for the monetary system moving forward?
Yeah, certainly. As Gary mentioned a minute ago, the original and the existing financial system is largely based off of gold bullion. And banks were able to leverage their position based on the quantity of gold that they'd basically have in the vault downstairs. We're at a point now where in 1971, when Nixon decided that gold and cash really no longer should be directly related and correlated to one another. As a result of that, now the reserve banks around the world are printing currency at a rapid rate, which is actually in some ways creating a bit of a mess of the financial system. So the implications of Mynt being developed and fed into the digital wallets of population literally globally is that we have a currency that is asset backed, not by something physical, stored downstairs, which is in limited supply, but something that's actually increasing in value and increasing in quantity every second. Every time someone touches their mobile phone, time someone drives their car down the street, particularly in a smart city, and all these different technologies these days that capture data. We're creating a system now where people are actually getting recognised for their contributions of data just by living, just by walking down the street, having day-to-day interactions with technologies that capture data. We're creating a system that enables a currency that enables the data producer to convert that data into a currency, hence the tagline of the company being the people's currency.
It's a whole new world. So tell me finally, Gary, what is the vision?
Well, the most amazing thing about data is that it's actually generated off people's engagement and living. And so far what we've seen is that when you engage with social media, for example, on Facebook, and you use the tool, they're collecting data from you, and that data is used to justify the value of their advertising, for example, on Facebook. But in the current climate, the only person who's getting rich from your data is the social media organisations like Facebook. So what we felt was that it would be great if we could create a system where there was an equitable distribution of the wealth that's being created off this data that we create by living in the world, and share that back with the people who generate the data. So we looked at models where that was happening in the world, and we could see in performing rights, for example, with music composition, that many people write songs and create music, that the revenues are collected together by the performing rights organisation into a big pool, and then they're distributed on a micro basis to all the composers on an equitable basis, which is really great. So with the development of blockchain technology, it became possible all of a sudden to take very large numbers of people who were contributing even small amounts of data, collate all that together into a big pool, and in an equitable way that's decentralised and automatic, distribute the wealth back to the people who've contributed. So we've built this currency in a way to recognise every single person that contributes their data to underpin the value of the currency, so they can share in the wealth that's generated from the growth. Really exciting idea. And the beauty of it is that it's only really become possible because of this shift in technology, which is the blockchain, in combination with the realisation that you can create a digital-based currency. And of course, it's got enormous benefits to people, normal people, because all of a sudden transactions can happen instantly. They can be done in a secure way where things can be tracked. It can happen immediately. Money doesn't disappear. They're not having banks do a transfer and have it disappear for 2 weeks and not get any interest on it. You know, there's not large organisations taking transaction fees on everything that's happening. It's a lot more equitable. And I think that's really what's happened in the net space over the last 10 years, and more as we move forward, that new technologies are going to create systems that are more equitable distributions of the value that people contribute. And that's what we see for Mint.
I'll just add to that, Gary and Danielle. Going back, say, 10, 20 years ago, the concept of data was relatively new on the scene. Particularly our generation really didn't know all that much about it. The internet started to come about, and all of a sudden social media came online, and people are starting to acknowledge the fact that, hey, I'm contributing data. And then along came more recently something called GDPR, which is a very hot topic, which recognises the fact that we actually own our own data, and obviously various other legislative provisions around that in different countries that are equivalent. We're in a position now where individuals around the world are starting to recognise that we own this asset. How much is our data worth? Probably hundreds of thousands, if not millions, for each and every individual. The question is, what do we do with it? How do we sell it? How do we monetize it? And that's what Mint's proposition is. We're creating an ability for individuals to monetize something that they already own in their own right. And at the moment, there's nothing else on the market that provides the ability for individuals to convert their data into a liquid asset.
So I just want to make one comment here, and you can see this from this exchange, what's going on. How lucky am I to find a foundational investor who is not only able to support financially, but contribute significantly to the development of the intellectual property. So we've had an extraordinary development process, and it's very exciting.
It's very exciting, very interesting, very compelling stuff, and I'm grateful that I get to speak to two gentlemen at the vanguard. Thanks for your time today.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Danielle.